Lady, sir, don't forget to record.
Yeah.
Under my computer.
Well, it's recording now. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
All right, I have one. It's the last one on chapter 4. I can share my screen.
Please.
I started it, but I just need help in understanding if I'm thinking correctly, because I'm not sure if I am.
Okay.
So. Okay, so here's a question. Now, I'm thinking that the A, B, and C are independent events.
Okay.
And I'm thinking they're independent events because one doesn't rely on the other. However, they're all related because they're all giving me it's all a percentage of one group. Is that correct? Am I thinking about that the right way?
You're thinking about that the right way. However, you said C, right?
So for A, it says, do you believe that A, B, and C are independent events? Explain why or why not. And I say, yes, they are independent events because one is not relying on the other. And I think that'll then skew me toward B or C.
No, I think mutually exclusive is when they're not.
When they're independent events, it means if you had one dice and another dice, the probabilities are completely separate from each other. If they're dependent events, it's like the example that we have, which says there's a 30% that the project will be on time if the delivery is on schedule.
Okay.
Okay. So that's where you get to the dependent events versus the independent events.
But this is not telling me that.
No,
so
it asks you. So you basically are sitting there and you got an MBA degree, and let A, B, and C, respective of the events that a randomly selected individual from this population is African American, is a woman, and has earned an MBA at the top 10 graduate business schools, right? Do you believe that A, B, and C are
independent
events? So if you had a pool of people, right? I want to do this where I don't actually give you the answer entirely. Okay. You understand why, right? I want you to kind of think of it through.
To get there.
If you had a pool of people, right? 100 people. What you want to do, what is the probability that the person you select is African American? You don't have to go to the exact probability, but
okay, yeah, it's like 8% that person is African American.
8%.
Okay.
Now, what is the probability that you have that you have a woman in that 100%?
13%.
Okay, 13%. Was that because of a certain percentage of African American women?
No.
Okay. Do you understand, man?
13% could be any type of woman.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right? Now, here's the thing.
13% did not depend on the 8% that was African American.
Correct. Now, if you had answered this question, if you had said to me, but the way I'm reading this is 13% are women if they are African American, just because you read it wrong, whatever it is, well, as long as you said because the if, right, then it would be dependent events. But it's not there, right? Does that make sense?
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
That's how you proceed with that with that problem.
That makes sense. Because at first I was reading it that you have 8%, then of that 8%, there are 13% that are women. Of that 13%, 17% have their MBA, but they're not saying that.
Right.
It's like 3 different ones, so they are independent. Okay, I got it.
Now, when you get to the other pieces, can you just pull that back up for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I don't like the way this question is worded. When unfortunately, when authors try and get a little too cute, it sometimes becomes a problem. Let A, B, and C respectively be the events that the person is African American, is a woman, and C is I would read it this way. Let A, B, and C respectively be the events that the person is African American, is a woman, and C.
But it doesn't say that C is an MBA.
Yes.
C is a okay.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But it could be either.
Right, but if someone accidentally or for whatever reason interprets that all three events are necessary, right, together,
right,
because the way they read it, I wouldn't mark them wrong, because again, I don't like the way it is worded, but it's correct. It's just it can get confusing.
Because you could say it's one pool and one is depending on the other, and they're pulling out pieces of each pool.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's just A. I would say let A represent the person is African American. Let B represent that the person is a woman, and let C represent that it is an MBA from a top 10 graduate school. Right? Okay. Now it's very clear what A, B, and C really are in terms of the in terms of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I did up here, but I got confused with that MBA one. And that's why I highlighted it.
You got confused with the MBA one because it's got the and has earned. Maybe I would read it. I can see that. That's what I've seen before in the past. Okay.
It's a woman in return, right? So you think it's.
You can get confused with the question too easily.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Cool.
Thank you. All right.
Next. Otherwise, I'm gonna pass out. I'm tired today.
I'll be ready for you tomorrow. Are you going to be available tomorrow?
I'm going to try to be available tomorrow around 9:30.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I still got some stuff I want to work on before I have questions.
Okay.
Can I just ask you a quick question about the data sets for the project?
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking up as a group like different potential data sets for the project, and a lot of the data sets that we find are already analyzed for like a number of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do our project and we're looking at the data sets and we're drawing, we're coming up with our questions and stuff like that, do we need to present the raw data again or present the data analysis that we found?
You're just going to basically present the data analysis that you found. When you submit something, you're going to submit a combined Excel spreadsheet with all of the analysis, and maybe you do a small little PowerPoint, whatever, if you want. You can figure out how to present it the best way. It's nice when you do it as a PowerPoint because now you're learning how to take the analysis and present for it. And when I say a PowerPoint, I don't mean spend endless amount of hours and produce a 20 or 50 page PowerPoint or whatever it is. I'm saying, okay, here's the title, here's what we did, and you can screenshot your Excel if you want. It's to make it easy. If you want to include the data, you can, or just get me a link to the data. I'm fine with that. If you want to include it in your Excel spreadsheet because it's small, that's fine too. And you can just zip the two and submit the zip.
It's just hard to find raw data. All the data that's out there is already analyzed.
I don't care if it's been analyzed. Don't worry about it. You can even do the same analysis as long as you did the analysis.
And be able to explain it.
So it's more about the interpretation of the analysis than the actual working of the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, basically, let's say someone's already found that there's a relationship between sugar and diabetes, as an example, right?
Right.
Well, you've got a data set, and someone analyzed it, and you go, you know what? I don't believe him. I'm going to rerun it. So I run it in Excel, and here's a good thing, right? So you run it in Excel, and you get your, let's say you did a correlation, and you found that it wasn't right. And then you say, wait a second, but the analysis they did found the correlation. Now, two things happen. Did I run it correctly, right? And if you ran it correctly and you got that same answer, then you start saying, hold on a second. Then you start saying, oh, well, wait a second. Why did they get the wrong answer and I did my thing right? And you can even talk about that, right? That's fine too. But I want you to interpret the analysis that you're doing, because again, it tells me that you understand how to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. It's almost like it's so wide open that it makes it hard. It's like there's
Yep. You know, and it's funny too, because when you first give it to students, you know, half the time students will always say, "Oh, it's boring. I got to use this data set. I'd love to use my own and all that other stuff." And then I go, "Okay, here, go get whatever you want." Oh, crap. Now what do I do?
yeah. I think it's like because even we start looking at things, and one of the problems becomes is like the questions that we start to ask become so laser focused on like one aspect of the data that then it's hard to do anything else. It's like you pick your data set looking for one answer, and then it's hard to find any other question.
I'm just interested, even if it may not seem to make sense, right? But it's using the same data set, right? Then the questions have to somewhat be related, right? If you're using the same data set. Does that make sense?
Kinda. It's like for instance, like we were looking, so just like we started looking at like for instance, like we were looking at like the different job centers in New York City, like the location of the job centers, and then we were looking at the relationship, like crime in the neighborhoods,
right?
And looking at, let's say, for instance, like it just happened to be that all of the job centers are in Manhattan, and most of the violent crime is not in Manhattan. So, like the question that we want to ask is why are they all there? But you can't really draw that from that data set. Like that would be the most meaningful question to ask is like, why is everything in Manhattan and all the violent crimes in the other boroughs? So you can't use the data set for that. So then, like, do we just ask different questions that maybe are less meaningful but can be answered by the data?
Say that one more time.
It's like at a certain point, it's like you want to ask questions that the data maybe isn't there for, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, does that just mean that we have to ask different questions based on like what we can answer from the data?
From the data,
even if
yes.
it's not that important?
Yes. Just answer questions from the data. This is not you're not doing a project here for the purposes of, you know, an analytical paper, you know, justification, any of that other stuff. You're doing a project to just learn, number one, what happens when analysts work together, you know, with different components, and see what happens. Because what's going to invariably happen is, oh, I found this. Oh, you found this. Well, wait a second. Does this make sense? I don't know. How do we tie it together? The second thing is, am I using the right technique? Am I interpreting the right technique? I don't care if you found an analysis that said the Earth is flat according to this regression. Okay, so the Earth is flat according to this regression. Interpret the coefficient. Well, according to this, the value that I got from this data, whatever it is, and there may be a reason why it came out wrong because you may need an advanced technique in order to fix things. But the way you use the technique and the data that you have, it's all reasonable. It'll be perfectly.
And then how are we supposed to? We're supposed to submit one single project.
Yeah. So you're going to submit one project. You get a group project, group grade. So you submit an Excel file with all of the different analysis on a separate sheet, so I know what's there. You can even say this person worked on this person worked on this, whatever. And then you attach also your PowerPoint if you did, or whatever else it is, and you just put that in a zip file, and you'll submit that on in the link for the project. That's it.
So we never actually present it. It's all.
No, I'd like you to present it to me like in a Zoom session for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You know, we arrange
it doesn't have to be recorded, right?
It doesn't have to be. If you want to record it, you can.
We could do it live. Like we could just pick a date and say, "Hey."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you could set a date. We'll get on Zoom, and then I'll go through it. You'll present it to me, and that's fine. What I'm trying to do is give people options, right? So.
Yeah.
Are you going to ask us a bunch of questions like
No, I'm
formula questions?
Formula questions? No, actually, the exact opposite. Okay. You know, when you give these analytical, okay, so Sherry, that's a good question. So you do an analysis, right? And you go over to your boss over in the corner, right, and say, you know, I did this analysis on the retail, you know, the differences between customer X and customer Y, right, or group X, group Y. You think the first question he's going to ask is, could you tell me the formula that you used?
Never.
That's the way the presentation is going to be.
Know about the money.
Right. It's going to be.
I did say today. that
What?
I feel like my analysis and I can analyze better than all of the analytics on the team. Just saying, just throwing it out there.
You did a what analysis? You did a what?
I can. I'm just saying I'm going to take
Oh.
over the analytics team because
Oh,
they just know a couple of Excel things. I feel like I'm way better at this point. And by
Let
the
me
time
tell
I
you.
finish it, you know,
Listen,
just
you're
saying,
gonna show them up. You're gonna show them up.
I'm going to show off in a minute. No, I'm not there yet, but I will.
it gets so much better. It gets so much better. And I tell all my students, this is just like being a detective. You could sit there for days with the data, and it's like literally screaming at you to find something, to find this. And there are different techniques that you use. You know, like if I wanted to predict, we actually did a prediction for one of the companies. I can't say who they are, but we did a prediction for one of the companies. They had about a year's worth of data, not much more than that. And we analyzed it week over week. And the model that we provided to them, the guy called me up and he said, "This is sick." I go, "What do you mean it's sick?" He says, "Your learning model is 1% off." He says, "You're 1% off on total amount of products being ordered." He says, this is unreal. He says, "We were hoping for 15, 20% error. We'll take that because we didn't have a lot of data." He says, "Your model is 1% off." I'm like, "Well, that's cool. Can we work more with you?" He's like, "Oh, budget problem." Yeah, anyway, so the point is that there is a lot more that you can do even beyond, and you get out of Excel, it gets even better. But that's the type of analysis that they're looking for. Nobody asks what's the formula, right? You guys have even asked me, "Oh, are you using the right formula?" I kind of sometimes have to look it up because I'm just so used to using them. I don't go through the formula. I don't need the formula, right? I know Excel and I know R does this automatically for me. So I'm going to, the purpose of the project is, how would you present this in a business setting? And you said it right. How's it going to make me money? Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what it's going to be like. And that's what I think this should be like.
Yeah, that's helpful.
You know, the name of my company as 5 Element Analytics is from the Chinese 5 elements, and the 5th element is fire. And the reason we called the 5 element was because we attributed each phase of this to one of those 5 elements, and fire represents action. It basically represents, what are you going to do with this analysis? Can you do something with this analysis? We delivered an analysis to a company. It was 36,000 individual analysis on variables that we did in literally 3 days. We wrote the code, it does it, and it literally picks out and says, of the 36,000 different combinations, 200 of them are significant. And of the 200, focus on these 70. And of the 70, only 20 were really, really things that they could do something with. It's awesome stuff. I love this stuff. It's sick. And this is when, Amazon will figure out what you want to buy before you want to buy it.
Oh my gosh. We were just talking about that.
Yep.
And doing beacon analysis. So yeah, I just need to finish this so I can actually do it properly.
Any other questions or any other questions like that? Like, how would you do X or Y?
Not yet. Not tonight.
Still got a ways to go here.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
All right. So much for online classes. I mean, we're basically doing real classes at this point, right?
Do.
Now, this is hybrid.
Yeah.
This is still online, and this is, I think these things help. But, I wish you had more time, and I wish you guys could ask more questions like, how would I find this? Or how would I find something like this? Then it would be really, really cool. No, but you're always welcome to ask me anytime.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Good night.
Good night.